Hello everybody, I'm Quentin, and I thought today we might talk about the Zappi car charger. Why might you want one? What's different about it from, say, some cheaper chargers? And I go a little bit into the challenges you might have, the things you might need to think about anyway, if you are using it with a smarter car like, say, my Tesla, or a car that wants to control the charging itself. How does that interact with this? And then we'll mention a couple of little tweaks that I've done to optimize my use of solar power by tying it into my home automation system. So let's start by talking about car chargers. Now, before I had this, I had a good old Rolex charger. Now, this is a relatively dumb device, perfectly good device, and I have used these for many years. I used these for about 5 years or so, both with this car and the previous one, and they do the job perfectly well. Simple, quotes, dumb chargers like this are very close to just sort of plug sockets. You plug the car in, assuming the car is ready to charge, it charges. There's a little bit more to and fro that happens of the charger saying it's ready, the car saying it's ready, the car saying how much current it wants, the charger saying how much current it can give, and so on. But actually, this thing is very close to being, here I am, I can give you power. When you want power, I'll give it to you. So that's a dumb charger. These things are reliable, they're simple, they're easy to use, and they're cheap. So why would you want, or cheap in quotes, so why would you want something more substantial like the Zappi? Well, smarter chargers like the Zappi can understand a little bit more about what's happening with the electricity in your home. And in particular, this understands the concept of solar power generation that you may be doing yourself. You may have variable power available as a result. You may want to take advantage of the greenest or the cheapest power that you can produce. And so it has various different modes you can operate in to make the most of your eco-friendly electricity. So here, where you see it says fast along the bottom of the screen, that's the charging mode you're currently in, and you can switch between different modes using these up and down keys here. And let's just talk about what they do. So fast one is a simple one. Fast is basically turn this into a dumb charger. This makes my Zappi look very much like my old Rolex. Nice simple one. If you plug the car in and the car is ready to charge, then charging will begin at the maximum rate available. So if you've got one of these, you don't want to use any of its clever features, just put it in fast mode and you'll plug in and off you go. However, probably if you've got one of these, it's because you want to try one of the other modes. So this is eco mode. Now what the eco mode does is it will also start charging immediately, and it will use power that's available from the solar if you've got it. But what it will do is it'll regulate the amount of that power to match the excess solar that you're generating. There is a challenge, however, with this, and that is that the standards for charging electric vehicles assume that charging is only going to begin when there is 6 amps available. So in the UK, this is about 1.4 kilowatts. So what this will do is it will start charging your car immediately. If you don't have 1.4 kilowatts of excess solar coming through, then it will use up to 1.4 kilowatts from the grid, but it will start charging immediately. If you have more than that available from your solar panels, it will use all it can get. So you may get a full 7 kilowatts if you have masses and masses of excess solar power. But the key thing about eco mode, it will charge now. It will charge at a rate that depends on how much power you have available. The minimum rate is 1.4 kilowatts, and if you don't have that much available, it will draw it from the grid, but you will start charging. Then you've got Eco Plus mode, and Eco Plus mode is the cleverer and more sophisticated one. So what this does is it says, I'm willing to stop and start your charge so that you only really charge when you have solar power available. And so here you can plug your car in and you don't necessarily start charging immediately. In fact, let me show you that. I'll plug the car in now. Okay, now we're late in the evening, we don't have much solar generation available, and so you'll see it says waiting for surplus here. So the car is plugged in, but it's not charging. And in fact, it won't charge unless I tell it to through some other method until we get some bright sunshine again. So the difference with Eco Plus here is that the charging can start and stop, and it won't immediately start charging, but that means you have control over whether it's going to use any power from the grid at all. So everything I've shown you so far has been using the front panel of the device here, but there's an awful lot you can do through the app as well. And one of the things that's easy to set on the app, though you can set it deep in the menus here somewhere. Let's see, it's probably under charge settings here, Eco Plus settings. That's the minimum green level. What that says is, I am willing to run it in a partly grid and partly solar mode, as long as it's at least 67% solar. 2/3 solar is what I've got it set to. So it will require about a kilowatt of excess solar to be charging, and if it fluctuates around that, then it'll pull some from the grid, but if it drops below about a kilowatt being available, then it will stop. And you note that there are delays here, 30-second delays on starting and stopping, and that is to prevent the system from constantly starting and stopping as clouds pass over and there are fluctuations in the solar and so on. And obviously allowing it to take some from the grid also helps with that. So Eco Plus, basically, if you set it to 100%, then you will only get charge from your solar panels, and if you set it to 30%, then you're going to be much closer to a normal eco mode, and it will just top it up with solar when solar is available. Okay, I can just show you that on the app as well, and you can see here that in the Eco Plus setting I can change the minimum green level to set how much I want my power to be green and how much I'm willing to accept power from the grid. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Eco Plus mode is what I normally leave my charger in. I leave the car plugged in when I'm home during the day, and then if we happen to get excess solar, more than I'm using in the house, it will charge the car up. It'll put it into the car battery, which is a sensible thing to do with it. But there are some limitations here. Firstly, note that Eco mode, by default, if there's no excess sunshine, it'll only take 1.4 kilowatts, which is probably 1/5 of what your charger can do. So it can be a very slow way to charge your car. Eco Plus mode, which I'm using, will stop the charge when there isn't excess solar available. And that means it won't do anything at all if there isn't any sunshine. So both of these will not, be, for example, be good things to use to charge your car up overnight, or indeed to charge it up now if you know you're wanting to go out later in the afternoon. And so we have a thing called boost mode. Now, boost mode basically means switch into fast mode temporarily for a short period of time because I need to get some power into my car. But of course the Zappi is clever. It doesn't just have one boost mode, it has several. Let's talk about what those are. So here you can see that the car is waiting for surplus power, which I don't have at the moment, so it's not charging. And you can press this button to put it into boost mode, at which point it'll start putting some into the car. Now, in fact, you can press this button and say boost, or I can press it again and say smart boost, or I can press it again and say, and it'll cancel the boost. So what's the difference between those? And in fact, what's the difference between boosting and just switching the thing into fast mode, which you can easily do with these buttons here? Well, let's have a look in the settings here. If I go down to the charge settings, let's go to manual boost, for example. So manual boost says, how many kilowatt hours do you want to add? When you do a boost, what you're saying is sort of the equivalent of going into a petrol station and saying, you know, give me 12 litres, right? You can pick an amount that you want to boost by, and it's showing you here roughly what that corresponds to in miles. So let's imagine you know that you're going to drive 60 miles tonight, and your battery is very low. You might say, I want to boost by 19 kilowatt hours here. So when you hit the boost button now, let's go back here. If I press this to say boost, it will now switch from waiting for surplus. It will check everything, and it's boosting 19 kilowatt hours. It'll wait a moment for the car to wake up. And there you go. You can see the current starting to ramp up into the car, and it's actually drawing it from the grid because at the moment I don't have excess solar. So that will give me a certain amount of miles just by essentially, I can set that up in advance. If that's my normal commute, I want to make sure I've got enough for that commute and come back with the same amount of power tomorrow. Then I can just come down, hit that button, or do the same on the app, and I will know that when it switches off, my car will have enough mileage in it to do the journey I need to do. If you're not used to thinking in kilowatt hours, by the way, don't worry, you'll soon get very used to it. You'll work out what your car will typically do per kilowatt hour. If you're not sure, most cars, it's probably about 4, right? If you have a big SUV, you might get 2.5, and if you have a Tesla and you drive it carefully, you'll probably get 5. But you'll learn what it is. So think in terms of 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour, and that'll probably be fine. Now, Smart Boost is very similar to Boost, except you set a particular time and you say, by 6 o'clock in the morning, I want to make sure that I have got 20 kilowatt hours. And it looks at how much solar you've put into the car during the day, and then will only top up in time for that period in the evening, where for any excess that you haven't generated through solar. So there's boosting and there's smart boosting. But there's also scheduled boosting, and this is the one I tend to use for most of my normal operations. So during the day, the car is plugged in, it's in Eco Plus mode. Anything that goes into it is from excess solar that we happen to generate. And then overnight here, I have very cheap electricity, or at least it's about 1/3 of the price of the daytime electricity, between midnight, midnight and 4:30 in the morning. And so I have set up a scheduled boost, which is the third kind of boost on a Zappi, to say, whatever happens, essentially switch on fast mode between these time periods. So then I can be sure that my car will be charging on that cheap rate electricity regardless of what's happened during the day with the solar. So you can see there's quite a range of different charging modes you can use here. There's the really simple, dumb version where you just leave it in fast mode, you plug the car in, if the car's ready to go, then it'll start charging. Or you can say, I want to plug in, I want it to charge now, but it can charge slowly at a sort of background level, and it can charge more if there's spare power available. That's called Eco mode. Or there's Eco Plus mode, where it will stop and start the charge so that you're only really using your solar power, though you can set that minimum green level if you remember that. So you can say, well, as long as my charging is going to be 60% solar power, then I'm happy for it to charge. So all of those are the different sort of basic modes of charging. And then you've got a boost where you can say, essentially, put 3 gallons in now, right? Or you can do a scheduled boost where you basically say, the petrol's cheap at midnight, charge up then to whatever the car says it needs. Now you'll notice in some of these discussions I've mentioned if the car is ready to charge. And this is an important point which can catch you out, because if you have a car, especially if it's one like a Tesla, which is reasonably smart in itself, it may have ideas of its own about when it should charge and how much charge it should put in. So let's go and get inside and I'll show you what I mean. So the first thing to think about is how much, and on Teslas anyway, you have a maximum charge limit that you would normally leave around maybe 75 to 85% for daily use, because it's got plenty of range and it's not great for cars to have their battery charged up to 100% all the time. And so whatever my Zappi tries to do, if the Tesla has a charge level at or above the maximum that's currently set, then it is not going to charge. And so you need to bear that in mind. You have two systems interacting here. Similarly, when I had a relatively dumb charger, what I used to use was scheduled charging. Yeah, and I would basically say start charging at midnight, and that meant that it would start with the cheap rate electricity. Now you can still use these with a Zappi, but what you don't want is for your Zappi to be saying one thing and your car to be saying another. So you don't want the Zappi to start charging at a particular time and the car saying, oh, hang on, power's available, but hey, I've been told not to charge till midnight, I'm just going to ignore it. Similarly, you don't want the car to turn on and try charging at midnight, but your Zappi's in an eco mode that says, hey, there's no solar power at the moment, I'm not going to charge. So if you want to use the smart capabilities of your car, then you probably want to leave your Zappi mostly in fast mode, because you want the car to make the decisions about how much charge and when it's going to happen. And really, you don't need a smart charger like a Zappi most of the time if you want to work in that mode, though it is still a very good charger, even in its fast mode. But if you're not going to do that, then I would say don't use any of the scheduling, don't use anything in the car's smarts here, just pick what your maximum battery level should be and then let the Zappi control when it's going to provide the power. So this is how I tend to operate now. I have the Zappi in Eco Plus mode, which means that during the day the car is plugged in and I will take advantage of any solar that should happen to be available rather than just throwing it down the drain. At night, I use the Zappi's scheduled boost to say boost up between midnight and 4 o'clock when the cheap rate electricity is, and it will then charge the car at maximum rate as if it was on fast mode to take advantage of the cheap electricity then. Note that with the scheduled boost on the Zappi, you are also setting a stop time. And you should think about how much charge you can actually get into your car in the time you have available. If you really want to charge up to 100%, you may find actually you need a bit more time than just your cheap rate. I have 4 hours of cheap rate that comes out at basically 28 kilowatt hours. That is about 120 miles for me. It's rare that I need to add more than 120 miles overnight. So this is a good kind of default mode for me to work in, and I can always use boosts or other tweaks if I know that I've really got a long journey tomorrow. But what about that maximum charge level, which you saw I had set I think to 80 or 85% there? Can we do anything clever with that? Well, yes, in this case I have a little hack which allows me to tweak that to the settings I want, and to show you that I want to go inside. See, for my normal day-to-day use, if I'm charging up over the winter, maybe overnight, then 70–75% is perfectly fine as a normal state of charge for me to have. On the other hand, if we do have excess solar during the day, I don't want to just dump it onto the grid. I would much rather take advantage of it myself. So in that case, I would probably be happy for the car to charge up to 80, 85, 90%, maybe even more, to capture this power that I'm generating and which is essentially free. So what I really want is two different charge levels. One charge level for excess solar and one maximum charge level for the scheduled boost overnight. Unfortunately, because I use Home Assistant as my home automation platform, I was able to put a script together that did exactly this for me. Now we have this little panel here sitting on top of the microwave in the kitchen, and I have some controls on this that allow me to interact with various parts of my home energy system. Let me show you. So here on this little panel, I have various panes for controlling different parts of my home automation system. This is the one mostly concerned with energy, and you can see this is a diagram of how much solar power we're generating, where's it going, and so on. But over here is stuff related to the car. And at the moment it's charged to 80%, and this little number here, 85, that is the maximum charge limit that's currently set. And so what I've done is I've been able to add some scripts and some special values here for variations on that maximum charging limit. And I've got 4 of these. So what do these do? Well, at the end of each night, i.e. when the sun rises, the maximum charge limit is automatically set to whatever I have here. And I normally leave that on about 85%. Hard to do this while filming. Okay, 90% is fine. At night, that will be automatically set when the sun goes down to 70%. So with these, I can set the 2 different charge levels that I want. However, if I temporarily tweak those for a particular event or a particular sunny day or something, I don't want them to stay like that. So I've also set some default ones, and at the end of the day, the day setting is automatically set back to this default ready for the following day. And at the end of the night setting is automatically set back to that night one. So these are the ones that are actually my long-term averages, the long-term settings that I want for the system, and I can tweak them for the coming day or the coming night using those 2 sliders at the top. And since the main reason I'm likely to want to do this is if I've got a particular long journey tomorrow, I have that special button there, which if I click it, you can see sets both of these to 100%, and it actually tells the car to set its charge level immediately to 100% as well. And so at that point, I will be taking maximum advantage both of any excess solar that's generated between now and the end of the day, and also of the cheap rate electricity overnight. So that's just a fun little demo for home automation enthusiasts. I hope that might be of interest if there are any other Home Assistant users out there. So that completes really what I wanted to say about the Zappi charger. Hopefully that's given you an idea, if you're maybe new to this, maybe considering getting one, why it's different from ordinary dumb chargers, some of the things it can do, some of the things it can't do, and how you have to think about how it might interact with any controls that your car might have over how and when it wants to charge. And I've given you a little idea about how I combine those 2 in my particular case, and then tweak them even further with a little bit of home automation to make it do exactly what I want. So thank you for watching. Do please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more like this, and I hope this video has been of use and at least of interest to some of you out there.